Hello, my friend, and welcome to another episode of I Love Being Sober, sponsored by Camelback Recovery, Arizona's preferred mental health and addiction treatment option to help people get on the path or stay on the path to recovery. My name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of Camelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people to stop their suffering and continue on their path to recovery. The purpose of this podcast is to come clean with all of the misinformation that's out there about recovery, addiction treatment, mental illness, and the strategies to thrive in life. Visit camelbackrecovery.com to learn more about our treatment strategies for alcoholism, drug addiction, or mental illness. And we even offer recovery coaching so that you can enjoy the freedom and happiness you've always searched for. Today, I'm here with a woman that was a great student in school. She prided herself on being an intellectual. She was planning on going to law school. However, the downward spiral began when she started doing drugs, which led to her dropping out of school, losing custody of her daughter. Then she got sober just long enough to have a son, back to drugs. Then she was finally arrested and federally indicted on drug trafficking charges. And that was her rock bottom. She went to rehab on pretrial, prison, halfway house, and then finally home. She's still clean and sober today. She's now living the life of her dreams. Her kids live with her now, and she gets to work in the treatment business where she gets to use her experience, strength, and hope to help others find recovery. She says that addiction doesn't define who she is today. Megan Racer, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you, Tim. I'm already going to start crying.
I know it's quite the story, which we hear those amazing stories all the time, and we get to work in the business of helping people and we get to save lives. And it's through our own experience, strength, and hope is really what helps us help other people.
Absolutely. Everything I've been through, I think it serves a purpose. It's great for me, right? I have a good head on my shoulders today, but it serves a purpose for others. And that's just kind of the place I have to live in, to not let ego take over.
I have a couple of sponsees that I work with. And like I had a guy that was at the Salvation Army for 6 months. And I had to drive down to the Salvation Army because he didn't have a phone. He couldn't leave. He didn't have a car. He was at the Salvation Army. And I literally drove there every single time. I couldn't call him. I couldn't say, hey, just wanted to make sure you're going to be none of that. I just had to show up, and he would get written up if I didn't show up. And he used to always say he's so grateful for me, and he knows how much of an inconvenience it is, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, you're keeping me sober, man. That's the thing. Anytime I get outside of myself and I get to help another person, really, I'm staying sober. And they don't always stay sober, but no. I'm sober.
Right. You're not you can't guarantee anyone else's sobriety at all. It's right. Got to be it's a them and God kind of an issue, but I like to be a seed planter. I feel like that's one of my big purposes today is I'll plant as many seeds as I can. I'll give you the information that I've gathered and the suggestions that I've been given, and what you do with it. That's going to be on you. I can barely manage my own turmoil and emotions sometimes. So to take on somebody else's stuff, I just can't do it.
Well, we've learned through the 12-step program, I'm not in the results business.
Yeah. I'm
going to take action. I'm going to give you the information. After that, I'm not attached to the results. And that's way easy. If I'm trying to give somebody information and I hope that they do something with it, or I have in my mind what they're going to, that's me being controlling, and it doesn't work.
No. And then, there was a ton of mistakes that I made early on in sobriety. So for me to sit there and tell anybody oh, don't do that.
Right.
I can give them information hey, it didn't work out very well for me. I learned a lot of good lessons though, but some people just not in a spot where they can learn that lesson and stay sober.
Right. Okay. So let's dig into your story, Megan. Tell me about your childhood. Where were you born? Did you have siblings?
Yeah.
Were your parents still married? Like, what did you grow up in an alcoholic household? Like, tell me about your upbringing.
So I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. We stayed in Arizona. I was the second generation here. My kids are the third.
Okay.
So I grew up
Where's your family originally from?
From Phoenix.
No, but you said your second generation. Where were they from before that?
Oh, God. Chicago and I don't even know on my dad's side, but like Chicago on my mom's side.
Okay, so regardless, born in Phoenix, raised in Phoenix, still in Phoenix. Okay.
Yeah, still out here. So both my parents were in the household the whole time I was there. I had a younger sister. She's about 7 years younger than me. We finally just like recently connected again. But
how long were you? So I guess 7 years apart. So were you guys close growing up?
No. She and I were just very different. You know, I was a lot like my father and she was a lot like my mom. My parents really didn't get along. I think like my mom wanted it to work and my dad just wanted to have somebody there. So it was more of like a convenience and a comfort thing. I definitely think there was a lot of mental health issues going on in the household. It wasn't something that was looked into. So we were all together a lot, but like there wasn't communication. For me, there wasn't just like a whole lot of hugging and like, you know, connection. I just didn't feel connected to my parents. I didn't feel connected to my sister. But my grandmother, you know, on my mom's side, she was my saving grace. She was like the other piece to me, you know. So I was with my grandma a lot. And she instilled a lot within me that helped me, you know, through my active addiction and getting sober to maintain some values and morals throughout all of that.
Okay, so your grandma was really the human connection.
Yeah, she was like that first human connection that I had. I was just a very depressed little girl. I don't really remember ever being super happy and just happy, joyous, free, you know. It just wasn't the reality for me as a young kid. You know, I later found out like I have major depressive disorder and body dysmorphia, and you know, all those things made it really challenging as a young child growing up, not understanding like, why do I feel this way? Why don't I want to live? You know, I just remember being a little girl and thinking like it would be so much better if I just didn't wake up.
Right.
So yeah, it's just very confusing. I had a hard time with like human interaction other than my grandmother. You know, I just didn't really know how to connect to people. It was very foreign to me. I didn't have a lot of relationships as a young child to kind of build upon for my adulthood. Yeah. So, I mean, the household dynamic was just not very, there wasn't a whole lot of attachments. You know, my mom was battling her own issues, probably with some mental health. She's not an alcoholic, but like she heavily, you know, drank then. That was her scapegoat when it came to the marriage with my dad. And, you know, my dad has a plethora of things going on with him. So it was just a very intense household of a lot of not saying a whole lot and bearing a lot of things that were going on. That's kind of how I learned how to do things. It's like, you just don't talk about it. And you don't feel it.
Okay. Don't talk about it if you just depress it, which really, I mean, major depressive disorder, that's what you do. You depress down to not talk about it. And that's so obviously that's what happened to you. And so how many, did you only have one sibling?
Yeah, just the one, my sister.
Okay, 7 years apart. And when did you start doing drugs? Like, when was your first experience doing drugs? What happened?
Yeah. So I stayed away from drugs in high school. Like, I really enjoyed academics. I liked to be involved in what was going on in that. I started, you know, to gather some groups of friends, and like we would drink every now and then. I remember I was generally like the designated driver, and I was comfortable with that, right? Like, I knew I didn't want to try drugs because like my cousin, right, she was kind of like that person I looked up to, and she thought drugs were really bad. So I was like, okay, drugs are bad. I can't ever do them, but I can drink because she drinks, you know?
Okay. She was the role model.
Oh yeah. And so at a very young age, you know, alcohol was a very acceptable thing in my household. So like I drank a lot.
And I'm sorry, when was your first drink? How old were you?
I think it was like 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the first time I like got blackout drunk was probably, and it was with like one of my parents' friends.
Okay.
I think I was in like a freshman in high school, probably.
Okay.
8th grade freshman in high school. I got like blackout drunk, threw up that night, woke up the next day with a hangover. And it was kind of like, oh, you're not going to do that again, are you? You know? But so.
And when was the next time you did that? So how did you feel about that first blackout? You wake up, you're sick, and then what?
I mean, I was so young then, so it's like you bounce back so quick. It's not like a huge issue. It felt horrible. I was like, this is awful, but like I had fun, so let's do this again. You know, it wasn't like a deterrent. Like nothing.
Okay.
No.
It was like, yeah, that was fun. So the fun outweighed the pain the next morning.
Yeah, the next morning, and then you know, there was definitely times where I'd be with like my cousin, and she was 3 years older than me. So we'd, you know, be drinking and I'd black out again. I had a couple of blackouts as a younger kid, but it never deterred me from like wanting to do it again. It was fun.
Did you like getting blackout drunk?
No, I didn't. I mean, I didn't like it, but I think I got to a point where I was like, okay, I know how to like kind of gauge where I'm at and, you know, not go too far over. Like there was some control at that point at a younger age.
Okay.
Where it wasn't like I had to have alcohol. Like I could live with it, you know, live without it. But when I consumed it, you know, I had to really, really think like, okay, you have to stop now because you're getting to that like point of no return.
Right.
But so when I was about 18, I met the first love of my life, you know, out of high school. I'm in college for criminal justice. And I see him across the way at the gym because I really got into the gym when I got out of high school. Like that was my thing. I started to power lift. Like I really found a passion for, you know, working out. I found that I was like super strong and I put a lot of energy into that. And so we met and, you know, he was that catalyst to me finding drugs. I guess he was about 6 or 7 years older than I was. And, you know, it wasn't really discussed until he brought drugs home for the first time, but he had like his own battle with addiction. And I didn't really know about that. And I was super naive. Like I didn't know anything about anything when it came to that. I just knew like my family's super prone to alcoholism and it's really destroyed some people in my family. So the first night, like I'd always turned drugs down up to this point. Right. So I remember like he comes home after work and we're like living in my parents' guest house. And, you know, I come into like the little kitchen area and on the table, he has just this whole like big thing of Coke. Right. And I look at it, I'm just like, oh, like, you know, those instant butterfly feelings, like I'm an adrenaline junkie, right? So that was my high starting off. I loved anything that had to do with adrenaline. That was my bonding with my dad was like, we'll go ride bikes or, you know, motorcycles, go to the lake. That was our time. And I loved the way I felt when that happened. So that like mirrored that feeling. And I just remember like looking at it and I thought in my head, like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm super excited. I want to try this. This is really fun. And then like the next thought right after that was like, I don't think this is really going to be enough for the two of us though, for tonight, you know, and I never
that
tried.
That was your first time.
That was my first time.
Had you thought about doing cocaine before that? No, it's just like you just came home and it was just there on the table waiting for you.
Right. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Did he tee it up like that on purpose?
Yeah.
Okay.
He knew what he was doing.
Okay.
He knew what he was doing. But yeah, I mean, I did it with him and I absolutely fell in love. Like, oh my gosh, you know, this is how I want to feel. But it was that high of like the first, you know, doing the first line. And then when you get to the point where it's starting to wear off a little bit, and like that's when, you know, having mental health issues really sucks when you're using drugs, because then you're like in this uber ultra depressive state, right? When you're starting to come down. So like it was, and I was right. That wasn't enough for that night. Like as soon as it was out, my mind was like, holy moly, we need to get more of this, and I wasn't like willing to say that to him at the time, because like I had to maintain that this was just fun, and like I couldn't possibly, really, really like this. But I think like a couple of weeks later, I remember I was in the shower and he came home again from work, and I really didn't know too much of what he was doing. I was just so young and I didn't really have a lot of worth. So I wasn't really willing to ask, like, what are you doing with your time after work? But he came home and he had like cut up a blue, one of the M30s, back when they were actually like pharmaceutical grade, and he opens the shower curtain, he hands me the pill and he says, open your mouth and take this.
So
and
what's for the audience, what's a blue M30?
It's like a prescription opiate painkiller. They're pretty strong. I mean, it's 30 milligrams, well, it was 15 milligrams of, yeah. And I guess without hesitation, I took it. And that's where the mental obsession had already started, right? It started the first time I did that line of cocaine. And I would challenge to say it started as soon as I visually saw the cocaine, right? But with opiates, it was like, oh my gosh, this is freedom. I can function in life. I can be around people. I can communicate my thoughts. And if I'm feeling something, I have energy. Like I was cleaning the entire house. I felt phenomenal, I felt like this is how humans are supposed to feel.
Right.
This is like what you're supposed to, how you're supposed to interact with the world. And I finally thought I found an outlet to do that. I was very naive. I didn't know the addictive nature behind opiates. And so, yeah, that started a whole new chapter to our relationship, because it didn't stop. The drugs just didn't stop after that.
And were you living in your parents' guest house this whole time?
Yeah. So for a few months we were living there, and then we started renting a place from my parents in Phoenix, like one of my old childhood homes I grew up in.
Yeah.
He and I were living there. And I was like going to school. He traveled a lot for work. And he made really good money. I was going to school. I was a server. So it was a perfect environment for me to get like all the drugs that I needed.
Right. Yeah.
I had the money, I had the connections, and he enjoyed doing drugs as well. So like when he would be home, like that's all we would really do together. But then, things just started to take a really weird turn. I realized that I was definitely groomed to be in kind of a narcissistic relationship. I was perfect for somebody who wanted to manipulate their partner. I was very young. I was naive. I had no worth in self. All the worth that I had in the world was put into my partner, because if people loved who he was and he was very attractive and all of this stuff, like had a lot of good qualities about him, great family. It was like, then I'm good. I didn't know how to find worth in self. So things they quickly turned not so great, right? Like he was using a lot of steroids and using a lot of cocaine. So there was just a lot of violent outbursts that he had, just random things that were going on that I never experienced in my household. Like there was yelling in my household, but never physical violence. So when it happened, and when there were times that it happened and my family knew about it and nothing was said and nothing was done, it was just like a reinforcement of, okay, then I guess this is okay. And I can continue to do this, because nobody's saying anything. Like nobody's advocating for Megan still, and the one person that I had that would advocate for me was my grandma, and she passed away when I was 17. So I didn't know that I had an out and an escape to get away from that. So
what happened? It progressed, obviously. So tell me the story of how it progressed, and then you dropped out of school.
So I eventually left that person that I was with. I found out he was in love with somebody else, and he moved to another state. And that's like when my addiction really took hold of me. I remember him, moving out of our place, and I moved back in with my mom. And I remember that very night, I called our drug dealer up and I was like, hey, I need to get 3 blues. And at that time, like 3 would last me for a while. It wasn't so bad. And that was just my coping mechanism for dealing with losing somebody that I had a connection with, and again, it's this theme of like, I don't connect with people quite often. So when I finally find the person I connect with and that connection's gone, and I'm not connected with self, like I'm a lost puppy, I don't have a purpose in life. So things took off. I met another guy and he had a heroin addiction. And I was just like, I can't believe you. How could you do this? And I still at this point have not comprehended that opiates are super, super physically addictive, right? I just couldn't understand, like, why can't you just stop? Things really crazy stuff started to happen. I'm still trying, I'm still in college, like literally studying for the LSATs. And like my partner is shooting up heroin. What's going on? How could he do this to me? Right. But here I am, like sneaking behind his back, picking up blues.
Yeah, right. Of course. That totally makes sense.
Right. Totally makes sense.
To a drug addict, it makes sense.
So yeah, obviously that relationship did not work. He ended up going to rehab, which worked out really well for him. He's doing very, very well in his life. And then I met my children's father at a wedding, of all things. And I remember, I had such a bad picker because I had, no worth in self, and I just didn't like who I was. So of course I'm going to have somebody match that energy. And I remember like it was at this like exclusive, I don't know, not a country club. It was, I don't remember what place it was, but I'm standing there and I remember him walking in and he sits down and he just looks like an asshole, right? He sits down, he puts his feet up on the bar and he's wearing like white socks with his, his tux, because he was one of the groomsmen, just these ugly white socks. And I was like, whoa, what a rebel. What a rebel in white socks. And yeah, after we connected that night, and it was an interesting decade later, I don't know. Yeah, he had a lot of connections and could get drugs, and that was perfect for me for where I was at, because I'm trying to do college. I'm trying to like go back and forth from my mom's house after bad relationships, because I just move in with these people. And I did the same thing with him, like knowing him for a couple of weeks, moved in right away, and like we were just like getting high all the time. And he started using the blues with me, and it was just it started to progressively get worse. And then, mental health, like I never really took care of that. So it just got really, really bad. I remember I was a server, and I remember going into work, and I like went and I hid in the back room and like shut the door, and I was just sitting there crying, and my manager came up and she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know, but I'm not okay. And I like went home that day and I quit. I stopped working, and like I made him support me, I didn't have the mental faculties about me to continue to interact and do the things that you do as a human. And eventually, our drug habit got really bad, and I was in my senior year of college for my criminal justice degree. I literally had like one more class that I was taking to graduate, and I just pulled out. I quit. Like,
wow.
Quit. Had no desire. All I wanted to do was get high, because then I wouldn't have to feel the overwhelming feelings I was feeling, and my thoughts could quiet down. And that just ties everything back into mental health. Like my main issue was never substances. It was never alcohol or heroin. It was my mental health that I never paid attention to and didn't really understand that I had an issue. So yeah, I quit. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. I would love to tell you that I was able to just say, oh, drugs are bad and I'm not going to use those anymore because I have a human life in me. You know, that's like what most sane people would do. Unfortunately, that just wasn't my journey with that. And, you know, I continued to use opiates till I was about 7 months pregnant, off and on. I quit at 7 months and I had my daughter. And like her dad and I mean, it was a drug relationship. There wasn't love. It wasn't anything other than like, what can you do for me? At that point, you know, after my first relationship, I looked at men a lot different. I didn't look at them as like somebody I could love. I looked at them as somebody I needed. Okay. And what can I get from you?
Wow.
So yeah, I had my daughter and dad wasn't really around and he was kind of around. He's just, that's kind of the theme with he and I, he'll be in our lives, not in our lives. So I think it was like 2 months after my daughter was born, I knew her dad had like a heroin habit because I had found it quite often when I was pregnant. And again, I just don't understand, like, why can't these men just stop using heroin? Like, just don't do it. But 2 months in, I found some that he had hidden in his vehicle. And I remember grabbing it and like he went downstairs or something to go to work and came back up. He was like, where is it? And I'm like, I have it and I'm going to use it. And that's going to be the end of it. And he was like, well, just give me some of it. You can use whatever and I'll bring more tonight. And I was like, bet. That's what we're going to do. Uh-huh. You know, there was never like this hesitation or like, should I do this? Should I not do this? It was always just like, okay, like we're doing this. You know, my mind was very much so made up. And I remember I did it and I was just like, this is insane. Like I thought opiate, like I thought, you know, prescription grade drugs were good. Like this is a whole different level of love. And so, yeah, I mean, we didn't stop for the next 2 years.
Wow.
After that. And that's when I found out that like opiates are physically challenging if you don't have them, right?
Right. Uh-huh.
And yeah, no, anxiety was like that first physical thing that occurred for me. And I'm like, what is going on? Why am I feeling this way? This is insane. And, you know, 2 and 2, I was like, oh, I'm withdrawing. And so the next 2 years was just, it was a whole like getting well every day, you know, trying to stay well. And then trying to function as a mom to an infant, you know, almost 2-year-old. So at that point, you know, my daughter was almost 2. DCS was called by one of his family members. And at that time, he was in another state. He kind of goes back and forth, right? Like that's his theme. He goes back to Missouri. DCS is called. We both pop dirty for heroin and a case is opened. Mm-hmm. You know, they file a petition. Madeline is placed as a dependent of the state and placed in her aunt's custody, his sister.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, at that point, like I called CBI. I said, I need transport. Like I need to come in. They transported me over to CBI. I waited like the 24 hours outside. I waited the 24 hours inside. Like mm-hmm. It was a whole process to get into detox. And, you know, after that, I entered a program. You know, I'm maintaining my sobriety. I'm checking in with the courts. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. You know, her dad comes back to Arizona during this time. And, you know, we didn't really talk. We didn't talk a whole lot at that point. I think about 6 months into my sobriety, I'm like, you know, UAing for Task, which was like a company out here where, you know, you UA and they'd give it to the courts.
Yep.
And we both had to do it. So one day, you know, we're in Mesa, Arizona, both of us, and we're at Task and we see each other, you know, and like I'm sober, he's like drinking, but not using heroin. And yeah, we ended up like hooking up a couple of times and our son was we got our son. Yeah, neither of my kids were planned. I had no plans in life. I was very lost. And yeah, so I get pregnant with our son, and I was like, hey, you know, January of like 2015, I'm like, hey, got a baby in me, man. And he wasn't very happy about it. He didn't want another kid, especially with me. And, you know, things were just really weird with our DCS case. He wasn't like doing what he was supposed to be doing. He was drinking a lot and bringing Maddie with him. And, you know, I'm like telling the courts, like, hey, something's going on with him. I'm really worried about Madeline while he's with her in his care and all of that, right? And on the 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, I get a phone call and they tell me that their dad tried to kill himself out in Queen Creek. And I was a mess, because at that point, you know, I'm like 4 months pregnant or something. I'm like keeping this secret from everybody. Like, I didn't tell my mom. We're not close, you know. I didn't tell my dad. I didn't tell his family. Like, he and I are the only ones that know I'm pregnant, and he tries to kill himself. And so, like, I tell everybody at this point, you know, and just like, what do I even do now? Like, so at that point, you know, he didn't succeed, like, goes back to Missouri, but it was always a question, right? He was just sending really weird stuff about getting like life insurance policies, and like the kids would be better off and all of this stuff, right? And I'm just like, I don't love you, but like, I want my kids to know who their father is. And it was a really big thing for me, for him to be in their lives. And, you know, like, DCS case is closed. I get custody back of Madeline. I have my son at this point. I'm still sober. Like, I'm really working the program. I start working for Maricopa County Superior Court. Like, at that point, I had no record, you know, and that was a field I really wanted to get into. So I'm learning a ton. I'm really, really enjoying life, you know. Like, this was a really cool moment in my sobriety journey, where like I learned about fellowshipping, I learned about the program and the promises and all of that. And it was like coming true. But again, there's like this looming mental health piece that I'm not addressing. And again, like, Megan's in her room just crying and depressed, and like, I can't get out of these major depressive episodes that continuously are happening. So I finally convinced Dad to move back to Arizona to, you know, meet his son and to be around his daughter. Biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. Biggest mistake, with great intentions, right? Like, I didn't want to be a single mom anymore. I wanted my kids to know who their dad was. You know, I just never had it in my heart to be like, oh, you can't know your child. I saw how much love my daughter had for him, and I could never deny her of that. So he comes back, he lives on my couch for a long time, and I ended up relapsing on alcohol with him. And then he brought home blues again, the opiates. And then one night he brought heroin into the house. I remember I was at work and like things are going okay, right? And, you know, I get home and he has the kids and he like brings me into the back room where my bedroom is in the bathroom. And he opens up the medicine cabinet and yeah, there was our substance. And, you know, 2 weeks later, I had a needle in my arm for the first time and he was shooting me up. And then, I mean, that went on for several years. Again, he left, went to Missouri. I moved back in with my mom. I'm still trying to like work for the court system while I'm like shooting up, you know?
Wow.
Like I got a promotion during this whole thing, right? It was so weird. Like the things we're capable of doing in active addiction. Mm-hmm. I like get promoted. I'm working like side by side with the judges and the commissioners there. I'm shooting up in the bathroom while I'm at work, you know, I'm like sitting there withdrawing in court. Like it was a really bad situation. I just couldn't take it anymore. I ended up quitting my job. I like cashed my 401k out. And for like the next month, you know, I'm like, I'm good. I have some money. Like I'm buying stuff, getting my drug, and, you know, the money runs out. And then I have to kind of revert back to old behaviors of like selling myself, right? I know I can make money that way. I did it sober and I've done it high. Mm-hmm. And so that I really didn't want to do that anymore. And I met some people, right? I've got these connections because of what I'm doing. And that brings me out to Mexico. And again, I'm this single mom and my kids go everywhere with me, right? Like nothing is off limits at this point. Like this was a really bad time in my life. Yeah, I mean, I tried to shield them from as much as I could, right? But I'm an IV heroin user. Like how attentive can I really be to their needs?
Yeah, so yeah, what was it like being in your active addiction as a mom? Like what?
They deserved a lot better. I know that. It was just a lot of agitation. It was probably just a shit ton of boredom on their part. You know, if I was sick, like we're not doing anything, you know. If I need to get my drug, like we're getting it. I tried my best to maintain like having them, you know, they're fed and they're clothed and they go to school and they go to daycare and all this, right? Like they're doing all of these things. But I just wasn't a happy person and I wasn't very present. And, you know, I was in the bathroom a lot. I always have this image seared in my brain, you know, of my daughter, like putting her little fingers under the door, right? While I'm trying to like hit a vein, you know, like that stuff doesn't go away. Like I'm hoping one day, you know, it won't be so impactful, and it's not today. Like 4 years ago, it was really bad. Like today, it's not so bad, but that stuff still like replays in my mind. Yeah.
Well, I know you're not the only one, and there are lots of other parents out there that are active in their addiction, or they were active in their addiction. So I think where you're at today is a great example to other people. Like, hey, this is where I was, and this is where you can be. And so
Right.
tell me about how being arrested impacted you. Because you were eventually you were arrested. How'd that happen, and how did that impact you?
So I guess during my time, I was crossing back over the Mexican border to America. I got pulled over to secondary, and there were a lot of drugs in my car. I had my kids with me, so you know they got to experience like all of that, you know. And
How old were they?
I believe my son was about 2, so my daughter was around 5. Okay. My son doesn't remember stuff, but my daughter does. She has a very vivid memory of everything, to be honest. Okay. Yeah, she was there during everything, and she was old enough to be aware of what was going on. My mom had to drive to Yuma, Arizona and pick up my kids. It was the most... I don't know. Like I still haven't really processed through everything that I put my family through. That's just a really hard one to touch. And so, you know, I had to spend some time locked up. They let me know like how much they found, how much time I was looking at, and you know, I figured my life was over for the next 20 years. Like I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. So I mean,
did you know that was a possibility?
What?
That would potentially, by you bringing these drugs across the border, did you know that potentially you were going to get arrested and go to jail for 20 years?
That just wasn't, I didn't think about that. My mind was, you know, keep your children fed and get your drug. Like it was the most like basic animalistic mindset. There was no rational thinking in any of this, you know? No.
So were you in jail in the Mexican jail or in the US jail?
No, I was in the United States jail. Okay. I went to a detention center in Yuma after my 7-day detox in jail.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
I was sent to Florence Detention Center. They gave me an opportunity to get out on pretrial before, you know, like while I'm waiting to get sentenced, and go to treatment. So I went to treatment for 4 months. I was able to spend 3 months, you know, one-on-one with my kids. And then when was it? Like February 20th of 2019, I was sentenced. So the recommendation for my sentencing hearing was 33 months in prison. The judge gave me 30. Wow. And yeah, so because I'm an addict, right? The federal government or the Bureau of Prisons has a drug treatment program within their prison, and I qualified for that. So as soon as I got to prison, I was actually in the treatment program, which did not work in my favor right away, because most of the women there, right, are hoping to get into this program. Like, that's why it was a minimum security prison for federal inmates. There were no fences. The inmates drove other inmates to doctor's appointments, to the halfway house, to the airport, bus stop, all of that, right? So like most of the women there were trying to get into this treatment program, and it was based off of your out date. And it just so happened, as soon as I got to prison, my out date was the first one. So I got in right away.
Wow.
Yeah. There was just way too many God shots in all of this to ever believe in something different. You know, there was a massive amount of drugs in my truck. Massive amount. So the fact that I got 30 months for what was in there. Like, I remember after my sentencing, the marshal, he's like, hey, I'm not going to handcuff you in the courtroom. Like, we'll go back here. We're not going to do this in front of your family. Super appreciative of that. And, he brings me into the back and he's like, hey, I need you to listen to me. Like, I've never seen anybody get that little of time for what you did. And he was just like, you need to do something with this. Like, be grateful, And so, like, I've carried that with me. That was probably a good motivating factor in changing everything in my life, right? So, like, in prison, I'm given this amazing opportunity to do this treatment program for a year while I'm locked up, and it's intense. It was like that mental health piece I needed. Like, we did cognitive behavioral therapy, like, Monday through Friday, and it's this like group therapy type thing going on. So, like, we're all holding each other accountable. We're calling each other out on stuff. We're giving, like, constructive feedback. We're learning how to talk to each other assertively versus aggressive, passive aggressive. Like, one of the big things I learned about myself is, like, manipulation, right? I'm a very manipulative person. I've used it as a survival tactic my entire life. And I had to learn to identify it and then turn it into an asset. Like, how do I use something that's so ingrained in me that feels so natural? Like, how do I use that to better myself and others? And I guess today I look at it as more of like redirecting people, right? Or like creating suggestions that sound really good, and, like giving my own testimony with these suggestions. And it's like prompting people to make better choices based off of my wrong ones. So there's a lot of stuff that's been tied into, like, my journey and the traumas that have happened, but the things that I get to do for other people today. Like, all of this could have either broken me even further, and I probably just wouldn't be here, right? Like, I just don't know if I'd have the motivation to want to be around, or like, I can use this as the fuel to continue to build a different lifestyle for myself and for my kids. Like, I experienced enough pain, and my kids experienced enough pain to where I just didn't want to do that anymore. And I was going to do everything and anything to make it stop. Whatever that looks like, you know what I mean? Like, keeping my side of the street clean. If I'm doing that, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to get to a point where I'm proud of myself. My kids are proud of myself. Like, they want for nothing. I get to help other people. Like, these were just things that, like, had to happen in my life in order for me to keep going.
Are you grateful for being arrested?
I am grateful. It's given me an opportunity to find humility. I wasn't a very humbled person, and it gave me an opportunity to, like, appreciate my family. It brought my mom and I closer. It brought my dad and I closer. It's given, it gave my sister an opportunity to reach out to me when she was kind of struggling, right? She started struggling with alcohol, So it gave us an opportunity to bond over that. Like, I forged a path in my family where if something happens, like, there's a whole spectrum of things I've been through. So like, I can help with a lot of things now, you know, like people come to me today, like my family comes to me today with their issues and they're like, what do you think? And all this. And it's just like, wow, you know, like 4 years ago, my mom was keeping her cell phone on her because she didn't know if like the phone call she was getting was because her daughter's dead.
Right.
Or like something happened to her grandkids. Like I kept her in a state of constant fear, and going to prison and hearing my mom cry on the phone after my cousin overdosed and died. And she was like, that was supposed to be you. Like, holy moly, God shot, the most painful God shot I've had, but like the most necessary one I've had to feel her pain. That's when things switched for me. When I could start feeling other people's pain and joy and happiness and all of that. But it started with pain because that's what I knew. I didn't know what that happiness stuff looked like. Right. I knew what pain looked like, and I knew I never wanted to be a causing factor in my family feeling that way again. And I was going to do whatever it took to not put them through that.
Would you call that your spiritual awakening?
Yeah.
So tell me about your spiritual awakening.
Well, I feel like there's been several that have happened in my life, right? And in the beginning, they were super painful. So painful that I was just like, can I get through this? You know, like this stuff is keeping me up at night to where I don't know if I can do this anymore. So I think the first real spiritual awakening that I had was in treatment. And I realized that like I'm no greater or less than anybody. Like I can connect with all people. I just have to be willing to do it. And so when I found friendship and treatment and like connection, it was just the coolest thing in the world. You know, I was riding on like kind of a little bit of a high for a second. Like I found my people again. I found people that I can be around and feel comfortable and like just laugh until we pee ourselves, right? Like, and it was just a really cool experience. And I was pretty sad when I did have to go to prison because I didn't really have that experience when I was locked up. It was, you know, it's prison. It's not supposed to be like this fun stay where you're like, you know, finding best friends for life. It was more of like, I'm just going to isolate and stay to myself. But, you know, hearing my mom scream in the courtroom when I was sentenced, right? I still hear it in my head. You know, I think we were talking about it, like getting triggered last night. Just, I remember like I had a flashback of the arrest and like my kids and, you know, it like those are super profound things that continue to happen in my life that like hurt a little bit, but I think are very necessary for my recovery. Like, I don't want to sit there and be a martyr, right? But I do want to remember what it felt like because I never want to go back to that place ever again. But like, you know, getting out of prison, right? I'm like living in the halfway house and I don't know. I didn't necessarily like have a pink cloud when I got sober, right? There was just all this like impending doom that was looming over me and like the federal government breathing down my neck and all of that. So there wasn't really ever a moment of like peace and just like, oh, okay, I can breathe. And so yeah, when I got to the halfway house, I was like, I got to get a job. Like, I got to get out of here. There's all walks of life here. There's men and women alike, from max all the way to minimum. I do not want to be in this halfway house. I have to be here for 3 months, but like I can work. So I went to work immediately. I started working in treatment. Because like, I guess in my head, I'm like, well, I'm a felon, but like, that's a positive thing I can do when we go and work in the treatment field, you know? Because like, there's nobody who can be like, oh, you just can't relate to me. It's like, oh, wait a minute. You're not that special. Number one.
Right.
You know? And so yeah, I started working in treatment and I fell in love. I fell in love with helping people. it was just so fascinating and like heartwarming. And, you know, I got to have these like spiritual moments with people where like I see myself in my journey of where I was in their journey. And it's like, holy moly, we're so much more alike than you think we are.
Right.
You know, and I just kept spreading this message of like, regardless of what happens, you can make something of this. You know, there's always a starting point to becoming a better human, regardless of where you're at. Like there were no excuses. Like I wasn't given any excuses when I got locked up, and I'm not giving anyone else excuses like now that I'm out, and I'm not taking them. You know, so I definitely had a different approach when it came to like dealing with patients of like, I'll be compassionate and I'll meet you where you're at. But at the end of the day, if you're going to come with me or you come at me with excuses, like you're not going to like what I have to say, you know. And people started to see like coming to Megan means I'm going to get some like truth that how she sees it. Right. She's not going to hold back, which was a really cool thing because that showed me my worth. Right. Mm-hmm. Me being able to give constructive feedback. It was so simple. Being able to give constructive feedback to others and taking that feedback on to myself was like, oh, like I have something special in a sense, right? Like I have this ability to be true to myself and true to others. And I didn't think I had that in me. And then that momentum continued to build. Like I had to find love and worth in self. Mm-hmm. Period. Like if I can't love me, then I'm a goner, you know, like the life isn't going to work out for me.
So what does owning your truth mean?
Owning your truth. For me, it's about owning your vulnerability. Through my whole journey, I have been an open book about what I've been through, right? And I know that God is going to give for me what I need, and he's going to take away things that I don't need, just stuff that I want, right? That's not really in alignment with who I am as a person today. And if I just open my mouth and say what's on my mind and say what I'm feeling and just tell the truth, I might not like the results in the beginning, but it's for a purpose, and I'm not meant to understand why. I may never know, or I may find out and there's like a really cool connection that I get to make. But just being 100% authentically me, and just, I don't know, like I have an ability to be around people and know if they're good people for me to be around. And if they're not, like, I don't have to be mean to them, but they're not going to be a part of my life. It's cutthroat. It's cutthroat today. There's certain energies and people I'm willing to bring in, and there's a ton that I'm like, you're just not going to work out for me.
Well, and I think that's just speaking to the awareness as a person in recovery. And that's one of the gifts of recovery in my experience, is that we have a heightened level of awareness. And the awareness is who we're around, and we've learned how to have hard conversations, boundaries. It's not about pleasing other people. It's, I got to take care of myself. And I know I'm the average of the 5 people that I spend the most time with. So the people that are in my circle have to be aligned with my values. Otherwise, that's going to lead me down the wrong path. It's, as Ben Hardy says, willpower doesn't work. If I'm in the wrong environment, that's not conducive to my recovery, that's not conducive to what I want my life to look like, then I need to draw some boundaries and not have those people close to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no shame in it, you know? Like I used to be like this people pleaser because I put worth in others. And if that person doesn't like me, then I must not be worthy. And it's like, no, I create my own worth. And as soon as I started doing that, this just amazing opportunity opened up to share my experience, strength, and hope with people. And like really have just like normies, right? Like CEOs of companies and just all types of people who are just like, wow, really cool stuff, Megan. You know, like, I really enjoy what you have to say, bringing a positive spin to the dark, because without my dark, I don't understand my light. Because I just don't operate in that way, right? Like, I have to know the fucked up pain of life to then know what joy looks like. And there's like, for me and I guess my belief in like my addiction, it's always going to be a piece of me, right? So I needed to find a way to incorporate my addictive nature and not suppress it and hide from it and shun it and make it into this monster, right? Because it's me. It's a piece of me. And it comes out every now and then in certain behaviors and certain thinking and all of that. And it's like, I have to quickly identify, appreciate, and like incorporate it into what I'm doing. And if it serves me or if it doesn't serve me, you know, and that takes that awareness. Like, it takes so much awareness. And like, yeah, I have a whole other separate name for that part of me. Uh-huh. You know, it's who Megan was. I need to love and cherish, because she didn't have a whole lot of support. She didn't have a whole lot of understanding of who she was. And she had a whole lot of big emotions going on that were uncomfortable and didn't know how to process through those to turn them into an asset. Right. So now today I get to appreciate like having a whole lot of big emotions and knowing how to displace them throughout my life. You know, and I get to teach my kids that too, because they have lots of big emotions, right? Like my son.
Yeah. Oh
my God, he's on the autism spectrum, right? Very high functioning, but like still behaviorally, like if one little thing triggers him, right? I see me in him, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So through this journey, like I've had a unique ability to navigate my way through the autism world, and every service that is available out there, like I have figured out how to get that for my son.
Is it just like alcoholism and drug addiction, or like drug rehabs and recovery? Phoenix is like is a capital for recovery. It's like a recovery capital. People come to Arizona to get clean and sober. There's so much recovery. There's so many resources. I mean, even me personally, I swear I can't go anywhere without seeing people I know that are in recovery. It's like, oh, I know that person. And whether it's from AA or from some other fellowship or whatever, there's people that are in recovery everywhere, which is a really comforting feeling. The other thing is with autism, isn't autism like the resources available for autism? Isn't it like that? It's similar to recovery. Like there's a lot of resources available.
There's so much, which is wonderful, right? Like we work in the adult world for substance and mental health, but like what we do crosses over so much into like the adolescent world. And I meet people all the time who have so many connections to things that I can utilize, which is amazing. Like there's so much at least in Maricopa County in Arizona, right? There are so many services that are available. It is time consuming, but like if you have that stubborn nature about you, utilize it as an asset and like keep going, never take no for an answer. You think there's something a little different with your kid, and some, neuropsych doctor tells you, oh, it doesn't look autistic to me. After meeting him for 5 minutes, take him to a different doctor. You know what I mean? Like you as the parent know better, and there's so many services available, and you're going to get so many no's and people who think they know, right? But it's just like about having that determination, and there's just a whole world that opens up. Like I don't stop talking about certain things in my life, right? Like I don't stop talking about autism because like one, I want to help people if they're at a point where I used to be at with my son. And then there might be something out there that I didn't know about, right? Just like in the treatment world, like I don't stop talking about it. I talk about it on my LinkedIn all the time because one, it's my job. I do business development, right? So like my job is to give information about the company I'm working for and to bring people in who need help. So of course, like I talk about my past and like what I'm doing today to better myself. Like I know it's like a career or like a work platform, but I feel like I can incorporate that into anything.
Well, it's like, it's how we're all after fulfillment. And by what you're doing by pushing that message out into the world is you're creating value in the world. You're helping the person that needs to find long-term recovery, the person that needs to find rehab, treatment, detox, whatever it may be. You're also helping with your message about autism. You're also helping families find the right resources. And I have a good friend who his son has autism, and I'm kind of hearing you say the same thing. When he originally thought, the doctor that spent 5 minutes with him said, no, he's fine. He's not, and my friend, his name's Chris. And he's like, no, something's, he's doing some research on it. He's like, something's not right. Something's not right with my son. And he's not as attentive as my other son. He's ABC. He's like, let's take him to another doctor. And yeah, he has, and he wanted to get ahead of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it benefits the child, right? I don't look at autism or addiction or anything like that as like outside the norm, I guess. Like for me, I like that to be my normal. My son thinks in a very different way. I think in a very different way, right? Like my whole family thinks in a very different way, which I love. Like I've just never been able to put myself in a box and fit into the norm. And that's for a reason. I was never meant to. Mm-hmm. And it killed my spirit when I tried. And I just didn't understand why it was until I get sober, and it's like, oh, like I'm meant for so much more than that. Like I'm so much more than like what people want me to be. Because like that was killing me. Just couldn't do it. I couldn't conform to these standards that were set in front of me by others that I adopted into my own belief system. Which when somebody broke it down to me like that, like your belief system's based off of what others said to you. I was like, wait a minute, no. You know what I mean? Like the defiant nature in me was like, this isn't going to work then. Like I'm going to come up with some cool things that I hear from others and bring it in. I'm going to choose if that's okay for me.
So tell me what you're doing today. What does your life look like today?
Life today. It's like just single mom life. I have my kids back in my life. I just got off of probation. I know. Oh,
that's amazing. After how long?
Oh, well, okay. So I was arrested on July 19th of 2018. Spent like 14 months in jail and prison right together, 2 years on probation, and I got off early. So it was like my halftime, and we submitted an order to the judge last week, and she signed it 2 days ago. Okay. So I'm like no longer property of the federal government. Well, in that way anymore, right? Like it's done. Right. It's over with.
Amazing.
Right. It's just a very freeing feeling. I know I've been free. I was even free when I was in prison, right? The prison's always been my mind. I can be anywhere and be free as long as I have a different way of thinking upstairs. But it was just the break that I needed, the weight that I needed to be taken off of me to no longer be attached with that. I'm living such a different life today. Like I have my kids full time. I'm a single mom. Like I'm supporting a household, and it was just like, and I'm also on probation, and that. But today, like, my daughter, I got her into flag football. Like she doesn't have a dad. She doesn't have that father figure. So I wanted her to understand, like, she can have good, like, male role models. So I got her into flag football. I wanted her to get some confidence in herself. Like I did some damage to this girl, and there's been a lot of working together to get through some of that stuff. And I just wanted her to have a space where she knew like it was all about Maddie. Right? Because she has an autistic or a brother who's autistic. Mm-hmm. So most of the attention goes to him. So I was like, this is for her. This is her special time. So, and she's just kicking butt. she's doing fantastic. She loves flag football, and I love that for her. Like the joy I see now, this is her second season, but like the joy I see when she's like confident in herself, it's like brought tears to me, you know? Like I just, after her games, I'm just like, man, I'm so proud of you. Like you're really giving it your all. And it's cool to see something like that.
Yeah, it's cool that you're giving her that attention too. I think the tendency, and this is what I learned from my friend Chris, is the tendency is for people to put more focus on the kid that's autistic. Mm-hmm. And then the other kid feels left out, less than, doesn't feel the love, and it ends up affecting that kid long term. So it's really good to hear that you're spending time with Maddie and giving her that love and attention as well, because it's important.
Yeah. I mean, like one of my son's things, like he thrives on attention. Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Attention is attention, and he will seek it. So, you know, luckily because of his diagnosis, like I'm able to get services for therapy. He's able to, my daughter's able to. So we're all doing therapy, right? We're building a foundation for our family, because like I had no idea how to be a parent, you know what I mean? And like I'm just learning how to be stable mentally. And so doing this is giving me an opportunity to like find connection with my kids again, you know? Like right. I'd love to say as a parent, like I came back into the household and things were just great. And I felt this, you know, tremendous love for my kids. And I do absolutely love them. But working through a lot of the traumas and stuff that happened, it was like a slow thing to connect, you know, like I had spent a lot of time away from them. And so now we're working on that connection piece. You know, I'm very connected with my son, and it's a bit more challenging with my daughter. So I do have to be more aware of like, it's okay that like you have a ton of love for your son and your daughter, and it's just a little different. And like this relationship, you have to work on a little bit harder than that one, you know, because like in my head, I make up excuses for my son, right? Like, oh, he's on the spectrum. Like it makes sense. Maddie, you can't do it. So it's about being like being fair about things, but also being understanding. And, you know, I'm trying to teach both of them tools to manage their own awareness of self, because I can't do that for them.
Right.
Be their own humans, you know, and they have two parents who have very addictive personalities, you know?
Yep. So tell me about work. What are you doing for work now?
I work at Camelback Recovery. So I do business development, and that role was like a really good fit for me, you know? When I started working in treatment, I was a behavioral health tech. And then I started doing case management, which I absolutely loved. I loved connecting with other treatment centers. I loved helping the patient realize like maybe they weren't thinking rationally, right? Getting them to a conclusion where they're like holding up to the commitment that they've made, right? First commitment in sobriety, as well as making a productive choice for themselves. And that was always a cool thing. And then I started doing admissions, business development, where I got an opportunity now to like connect with treatment centers. And like, I get to go in and they open their doors to me and they're like, yeah, come look at our facility, come meet our clinical team, come meet our medical team. And it's like, okay, you know, I was a patient at one point, not understanding anything about this world. And now people welcome me with open doors and want to give me information about like what they're doing to help others. Like this is unreal. And then also I get to go into programs and really see like, do you have the patient's best interest in mind? You know, and I get to vibe off of people and understand what they're about. And if it's a little off to me, like I don't have to work with them, which is really cool for me. You know, like I get to work with people today that I believe in my heart of hearts really want the best interest of the patient and their client. And that's who I choose to work with today.
Right. Why is Camelback Recovery the right place?
Camelback Recovery. So just starting off in working in treatment, there was a certain group of people that I worked with, right? And we all kind of transitioned from one treatment center to the other. And it was always like a progression up in what we're doing in our roles. And they all came to work with you. And, I felt like I needed time and I needed some understanding for business development. So I went with another company that, gave me a good foundation for business development. It gave me a good foundation for building relationships and understanding what I'm doing, understanding insurance and all of that. So yeah, when the opportunity presented itself to come over and work with Camelback Recovery, it was just like, yes, yes, I will. This is, it's like family. Like I want to be a part of something where I feel as if they're my family. Most of the people that I think almost all of the people that work here are in recovery themselves.
Yeah,
it's huge. It's so huge. And they're all just very established in their careers of choice, right? In each different department, I've seen these people flourish and grow and really hone in on their skills. And it's just super cool to be around very motivated, like-minded people.
Right.
That's huge for me,
Well, we're grateful to have you on our team.
Thank you.
One last question. Who's appropriate for Camelback Recovery?
Who's appropriate? As like a patient?
As patients. Like
Okay.
who's a good fit? Like what are you looking for when admitting a patient to Camelback Recovery?
For a patient. So personally in my journey, I love patients that are on the cusp of understanding that mental health might have something to do with why they're using drugs, right? Patients we get for mental health primary and co-occurring disorders, right? So substance use and a mental health disorder or just mental health primary. But my ideal person coming in is just somebody who's super open to learning about the mental health side of what's going on, as well as looking into the substance side and connecting. I love AA for that. I love the connection piece that occurs in the rooms. Cause that's for me, that's one of the pillars of the foundation of my recovery is that connection. If I don't have it, I don't have much, right? Mm-hmm. You have a pretty depressed person on your hands. So yeah, just somebody who is ready and willing to really dig into some stuff, and you can be defiant and push back and all of that. And we can sit down and have conversations about how that's just not conducive to your recovery and to your mental health journey, and how you're just really holding off the inevitable. But that's what I did. I was very resistant to hearing any of that. I didn't want to know why I was the way I was. I just wanted it to stop. But you can't. Doesn't work that way, Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. But yeah, anybody who's struggling with mental health primary, co-occurring disorders, yeah, love it.
Is there a question that you wanted me to ask you today that I didn't ask?
Is there a question? No, I think we pretty much focused on a lot of it. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about your morning routine.
Oh,
that's the question I ask everybody.
Morning routine?
Yeah, tell me about your morning routine.
Okay. So my morning routine involves my children, right? My daughter's she's pretty stellar. She does her own thing. She's 10. She's great. So my focus is generally on my son. We have a specific routine that we don't deviate from. He's not allowed to watch TV, play tablet, any of that until clothes are on. He's had food, he takes medication, brush teeth, brush hair. Once those 5 things are done, his morning is his, tablet time, TV time. But so my mornings are just honestly consumed with my son and getting him prepared for school. Once that happens, then mom gets to get ready, generally take a ton of phone calls, checking emails, doing all that, just really jumping into my day and setting it with intentions, reading my daily readings.
Okay.
But yeah.
Get the day started off on the right foot.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we're at the end of our time with Megan Racer. So that does it for our time with Megan. And before we end this episode, I want you to go to the review section on iTunes or comment section of LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. wherever you're watching, type in the one thing that resonated with you. Every comment counts, and what you share could resonate with someone else that is struggling and potentially save their life. So go ahead, share the one thing that resonated with you. It'll take just 60 seconds out of your day, but what you share could not only save you, but it could also save someone's life. Okay, that does it for this video. I'm Tim Westbrook. I hope that our paths cross again in the next episode of I Love Being Sober. And Megan, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. And we'll see you on the next video. If you found this video to be of value, be sure to like it, subscribe to our channel if you want to see more videos, leave a comment if you have a question, if you've got something to say. Camelback Recovery provides treatment services for people struggling with mental health, mental illness, addiction, alcoholism. So if you or someone you know is struggling, be sure to reach out to us. You can go to our website, camelbackrecovery.com, or our information is in the comment section below. And we provide everything from detox, inpatient, outpatient treatment, sober living, recovery coaching, sober companion services. So either we'll be able to help you or we'll be able to refer you to people or treatment centers that might be a better fit. So I will see you in the next video.